All right, everybody, welcome to the September Emacs ATX. My name is Charles Lowell. I work at the front side, which is, ironically, it's a UI shop. So it's kind of strange that we used an editor that's known for its curmudgeonly UI, but it allows us to do some really fantastic workflows. So usually we start off and just kind of go around and introduce ourselves and talk about what we do and how we use Emacs, and then we kind of have a couple presentations, and then just throw open the floor for to people to talk about little tips, tricks, whatever that they want to share. So that's me. I'm Charles, and over to you.
All right. I'm John Hume. I work for a company called Emacs. Most of my work is in Clojure, and I've been using Emacs mostly for Clojure for about a year and a half, I guess, maybe 2 years. And haven't delved much into customizing it. I built a little bit of Emacs list tie-in to some Clojure backend stuff that I was doing, and I sort of just barely got it to work with what I was doing. I used a compile-mode buffer at some point, and I managed to make it work, but I didn't fully understand why it was working. So anyway.
I'm Eric. I work for a company called UW. I work with the UK. I do opinion polling. I program mostly in Python, and I just use Emacs. We're unfortunately in the same office, but I use it for everything. So I use it for email, I use it for my shell.
You used GNUs?
No, I've used GNUs and I've used Wanderlust for a long time, and then lately though I've mainly stuck with Move for E.
Yeah, which is really good. Similar to like Not Much if you guys are interested in Emacs.
Do you use Google Apps by any chance?
I do for my personal email, but not work. Like work, they use Outlook, so I use it for that, and then I use like my phone for calendaring and stuff like that.
The question is, it play nicely with Outlook, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't never use it for the calendaring or I don't really mess with any of that stuff. But all the IMAP stuff I just use offline IMAP to sync it, and then other than that, it works really well. But I got onto that really early because I was a big fan. I guess Got Emacs, that blog. He wrote it, and so once he announced, I was like, oh, this is great, because I did all my Wanderlust stuff from that, and that was really good too. But anyway, that's me.
Norman Richards. I've been using Emacs for about 24 years, and I'm almost a beginner. I'm almost ready to graduate from beginner, I guess. Yeah, so I'm a Clojure developer, and I've switched back to Emacs for Clojure development. I did iOS, and I did some Python, but I actually didn't do my Python. I did in Emacs. So I sort of got back into it the last few years for this.
So most of you have met me before, I think. I'm Joel Crisp from the REPL Corp. We do media metadata and TV guide information. We're currently building out a big OpenStack cluster, which is Python and Ruby. So I'm primarily using Emacs with remote connectivity mode and Python and Ruby.
Using Tramp?
Yeah, the SSH remote stuff, which you need a slight tweak to your SSH files to make it stop bombing out every 5 minutes.
I'd love to.
There's a heartbeat. There's a heartbeat tweak you need to make to turn that on. But then I kind of swapped using SSHFS because it's just kind of like more transparent, and I can just remote mount all of my machines with SSHFS and do that. So
It's clever.
I think it's the same tweak.
My name is JJ Asgard. I work for Chef with Matt Ray. If you guys know Matt Ray. He got me back into Emacs after about a year and a half away from it. I was a sysadmin. I SSH'd around a bunch of different boxes, so I stuck with Vim for a long time. And now that I am the OpenStack guy at Chef, I don't have a cluster to worry about or anything. I'm just worrying about code. I went back to org mode. I remembered the love and beauty of it, and I've just shot off from there. So hopefully I'll learn some stuff.
All right. Well, fantastic. I guess we'll get started then. We have two presentations today. Eric is going to talk to us first about compilation mode and all the wonderful things that you can do with it. So without further ado, I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Cool. So compilation mode. So again, I'm Eric. Here's my info if anybody's interested. One thing on my GitHub, I do maintain pytest.exe, a pytest integration thing for Emacs. So, and I'll actually show a little bit of it just so you can see how it works with compile mode. So what is it? It's a special mode. It's where you can run compilations, but really you can run any sort of command in it. So, for example, I can go and run compile, and it gives me a command at the bottom, and it defaults to make, but I could do something like just do yes, and you'll see that it just goes and outputs yes like crazy. So you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. So then you can go to the top, and we'll show you the different things and everything. So it's pretty handy. So it's nice because it does stream output. So this is one of these things, like if you've ever written UI stuff in like Windows Forms or something like that, and you wanted to have something output and you wanted to keep it like scrolling up, this does it for you automatically. So you can do any sort of command that might be streaming output, and you can do it. It also parses links for files. So typically you run it in like something like make, and if you get a compile error, it'll give you links to all the errors, and you can go and navigate those links and pop around in them. So again, if you've ever run tests, for example, and you've had this hugely massive traceback with tons and tons of things, and you know, if 20 tests failed, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to scroll up in my terminal for 10 years to find something. You don't have to do that in compile mode. It's really nice. So then it gives you key bindings for jumping in between links, and then you can also go and really easily rerun whatever it is, which is just kind of a silly thing, but at the same time, just like in Dired, if you you know, you can hit G and it'll refresh it, or in proced, you can do the same sort of thing. So it's really handy for all these sorts of things. And what's mostly nice about it is it's without a lot of eLisp experience. So that's why I actually liked it. So like I said, if you don't compile, you use Ruby or you use Python, you use some other language that doesn't require compilation, you can run your server processes in it. So that's really handy. If you have, I had a project at work that ran something like 8 different processes, and so it would need more than one. So I would go and just have start app, and it would go and start up all these processes for me in these compile buffers. And so, oh, I had a trace back in one, and I could automatically see and jump to files. And it was really handy. You can tail logs, so you can go and I sometimes will use it to connect to a server and tail a log on the remote server, and then it's in a compile buffer. So again, if I see a traceback or something like that, it gives me a hint as to where it goes and stuff.
Can you run me real quick?
Yeah.
And show me just like tail of var log messages or something? Just
yeah.
Just to see it.
Oh, I don't have permission.
Okay, well,
I'll show you. I'll actually go through where I tail a process, but yeah, you can do whatever with that sort of stuff. So it's real handy for that, and it's really easy to do it. So the nice thing is if you just want to start a process and do it, you can just start it just by doing, you know, meta x compile. So there's a lot of modes that actually use it. There's grep mode. Oops. Yeah. Grep mode, all the different grep modes use it, so that's how you get the links to the different file. Projectile uses it all over the place. So there's a bunch of searching things in Projectile, and there's a bunch of like multiple editor sort of things, and then obviously PyTest uses it that I wrote, and then RSpec mode, because the other day Charles showed us a little bit and it used it. So there's a lot of sort of things like that where they use it. I know when I use CIDER or something, one of those testing modes uses it too.
Just remind me what Projectile is.
Projectile is a project management tool. So the nice thing about it is I'm actually in a project right now, and I can go and switch projects. I have all these different projects that I can go and look at. So like I work on a thing called Pangea, and I can go do things. So it goes and it'll give you project-specific things. So if I have a file that's open, I can go and I only want to switch between buffers that are included in the project, and you can do things like run off searches, and it's
cool.
yeah, it's actually super helpful. I just started using it like a couple of months ago, and it's been insanely helpful. So here, we'll try it out. So I have a simple Python file. So it's just a couple functions, no big deal. So we're going to run this test in pytest.el. So I'll go pytest just so you guys see what happens. So it ran the test. You can see that it runs. So this is actually nice because if you ever run a test, so this one I'm running a specific test. So you can just copy that and paste it in a terminal or shell or whatever, and then adjust it as you need and kind of get it. So sometimes that's helpful if you have a really complex command that happens and stuff like that. I use it all the time. So we didn't get any errors, so let's go ahead and make an error happen. Run that again. Whoops. So here we go. So now we have an error. So the way I usually use it is I actually go into the buffer, to the compile buffer, and then I use the key binding. So Alt N or meta N will go to the first error. So there, I'm at that error. I can see where the error is, and I can hit, oh, well, I want to go to the test for that to happen. I can hit Enter, and it pops me to the buffer and highlights that for a second, and then shows you the.
But also, compilation.
Yeah, and
really nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's so nice to be able to do it, and it works like there's a compilation minor mode as well. So if you're in a shell and you're running a process and you had a traceback in the shell, you can go and pop on compilation minor mode, and it'll all of a sudden highlight this stuff for you, and you can go and do it. So it's not as though you have to always think beforehand. So there's that guy. I'll do this as well. So when I ran it, it ran. So say we had the error, right? And I wanted to run it again. So I just popped into that buffer, and I hit G, and it refreshes the compilation. So it'll go and redo whatever that compilation was. So then I can go G again, and it runs, and it's fine. So that's nice. And then I hit Q, it disappears for me. I don't have to kill the buffer specifically. Another one, and so here I'm gonna run that guy, and that worked, unfortunately, I guess, right? So back in my Python. So this one is interesting because we have a bunch of errors. So here we can go to file, and I'll jump to what you can do is see I'm in the test file right now, and I can jump to the errors from that file, and you can do it two ways. You can hit Control-C and then whatever that little slashy thing at the end. Oh wait, sorry, Control-X. Yeah, Control-X, and then tilde, or not tilde, but backtick. Thank you. But the more obvious one, I think, is hitting Meta G N, and it'll go, and you can see it pops to the files that you're going to. So and then you can also go back, and you can hit Meta G P, and it'll go back. So that's kind of nice. We'll make this pass. So there. Basics of it, of how you sort of use it and how you navigate around in it. So here's the key bindings. So these are the key bindings you have when you're actually in the compilation buffer. Like I said, most of the time I mainly am using when I'm in the buffer, this MN and NP is really, really helpful. Here there's stuff if it's more file-based, if you are doing something like, I don't typically have millions of files when I use it. I usually am doing one test, but like you can have a lot of different files and things like that. So, and it's always good to know is Control-C, Control-K, and that's kill compilation. So if you're in a compilation buffer and you're running some process that's taking forever and you want to stop that sucker, That's what you need to know, because otherwise you're going to kill the process. It'll say, oh, you have a process running, and it'll kind of freak out on you. And so that's helpful. And then if you're outside of your compilation buffer, you can go and use these to go to the next and previous error. And this is kind of helpful. If you go back to if your cursor's at the bottom and you want to go back to the top, you just hit the prefix arg Control U. So let's actually do something kind of interesting with it. And oops, let's write a little server thing. So most everybody probably writes services one way or another. So we're going to write a little. I already wrote a little service in Python, but we're gonna implement this function, so you can write a little compilation thing. So you can just call this function, and it'll start a compilation buffer, and you're good to go. So we have this just sets up some simple server stuff. Interactive just means I can call meta_x, and then this is the function to know about. So compilation start. So this guy takes 4 arguments if you want them. It's got the first one's the command, so that's real easy. The second one is the name of a mode. So you can use different modes if you want to use things probably like shell mode, or if you have some special mode that you use for this sort of stuff. I've never used it. I just use, say, nil, and it uses a comment buffer, which is a whole other story. And then lastly, it takes a function to create a buffer name, and it does that because it'll pass in this mode name to it. So you can see I created this little function just to do this. So it passes in mode. See this run. Fill that in for us just so we can see what that and I'll show the file too. The file is really simple. Oops. It's just a really simple thing to serve a file, and I'll do something fun here. We'll print the name of the file that it's serving, so we can see it.
Environment variables for shell shock.
Yeah, there's nothing crazy. Yeah. Here's my function that I just made, and you can see. So it started up this sweet server here. So we can go and create a shell. And we can go and call foo.text. So there's our sweet server serving stuff, and it's in there. And so if we had an error, I don't have any errors that are going to be thrown. You could go and pop around in the errors and pop around to the different spots. And so when you're done with it, Control-C, Control-K, and it shuts it down nicely for me and finishes. So another thing too to notice, this is something I forgot to mention earlier. You see compilation start, and then you also see compilation ends. So you can, if you want to run something in a compilation buffer and time it, for example, you have at least the bare bones thing to do that, which I often forget. That I'm like, oh man, I wonder how long that took, and then I didn't know, and so now you have some way of guessing. So that's kind of nice as well. So we'll do one other thing here. So it'd be really interesting to, you remember in our log we had that serving in the file name. It'd be kind of cool if we could jump to that file when we're running the compilation buffer and we're seeing that output. So let's go ahead and add some special highlighting to that. So here is there is a associated list. If that's the right thing, I'm terrible at elist. So there's 2 things. There's this compilation error regex a list, and so this is a list of symbols that point to something in this other list, compilation error regex p a list. So, and what these are just regular expressions that you can use to signify where, how to get to the point in the file. So we're going to add this guy for serving. You can see it's kind of crazy, but as I see it, just as you look at that, if you can't see it, you can see it in that third line there in my mini buffer area where it says 2.2.4, 3.5, 6, all that sort of stuff. So what you can do in this regex is the first one's the file, the second one is the line number of the file that you want to go to, the third number is the column, and then there's 2 other numbers you can do to that will give you some more information. So in our case, we just want to go to the file, but if we wanted to go to the specific line and column in the file, we can specify that in our regex if it's available and whatever the output is.
So just to be clear, it's using capture groups in the regex?
Yeah, so this is the first, yeah, so the first capture group, that's the file name we're going to be using. And then so if you had like, if I had like a line number, then number or whatever.
And one of the other ones is if you've got a function name in there or a tag, you can extract that and you can use etags then.
Yeah. So this you can look at the documentation is not on this guy. It's actually on this variable. So if you do it, help on that variable, you'll find out all about it. So we just added that guy, so that's nice. So then we add that this symbol, this Emacs ATX serving example. We add that to our A list. So that's cool. And then now when we we start our server, and then we go back to our shell, run our curl thing. Oh, look at this we have here. So if you notice, I'm at the bottom of the buffer. I'm going to hit Alt P, and it'll jump up to it, and then I can hit Enter, and then bam, I'm at the file.
Yes.
So it's pretty handy. It's pretty nice. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. That's fun. And the nice thing is, this guy is easy to write. You can write if you have a little, This is one of the first things I ever did in eList was stuff like this, and it was so easy and so nice. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do everything in Emacs further. So that's about it. I put a repo up with all this stuff. There's an org file and all these files and things like that, so you can take a look and copy and paste and do whatever. So feel free to write that down if you like. And I'll link it in the meetup as well.
So one other thing is there's an auto-save mode that when you trigger a compile, you can tell it to auto-save everything.
Oh, yeah?
I just can't remember what.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
There's, when you hit MetaX compile,
yeah.
If you've set that, it'll automatically just save everything.
Yeah.
Before you start. And I can't remember if it's a hook or if it's a.
Yeah, I think it's I can't remember either. I think it might be. You probably can customize it. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It will prompt you. So there. Yeah, so like if, for example, you might have seen it if you guys installed any packages and it has to compile the packages, it might be like, do you want to save this file? That's because it's a compile mode buffer and it's asking you about that.
So the thing with that is as I just haven't used compile mode for since I stopped doing C. So,
right.
I think I'm going to go back and revisit it after this because I've forgotten how cool it is. But
yeah, there's a lot of little things and it's nice. I mean, I even the other day I was in a shell and I run something and there was a traceback. And so in my shell, you can go and do, you can turn on compilation minor mode. So then if I did, whoops. Lost my, okay. I can go and say 1 divided by 0. That's probably not a good one, but I can turn on compilation minor mode and it tries to highlight stuff for me. So it's handy because if you, like I said, if you run your test in a shell and you should be using shell mode or term mode or something, you can just hop to it and it's good.
Compilation minor mode, does it use the regular expressions?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, because I think if I did serving. Work. Let's see. Maybe not. Oh, because the line doesn't start with that.
Maybe echo it.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Check. Yeah. So, compilation mode.
All right, cool, man.
Yeah. Of course, in Emacs, you can probably replace the regular expression with a function anyway if you want.
Yeah, you can, and that was what there's a real simple Stack Overflow question about that specific thing because you can go and do things like run a function on the capture results of the regex, and that way you can go and pop back and edit it. So for example, if you're doing that and you're doing it on a remote server and you want to find your local file, you could go and find the local file and then do it that way. So
is there any way you can have a compilation run a remote process? I guess you could do that.
Yeah, I do it with SSH by just doing it that way. But you can, I mean, it's whatever process you can start. So.
You can use a shell on the machine.
Yeah.
Compile mode on the shell. But that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, you guys want to take a quick break? Anybody want some more food? Or?
So how's the performance of it on really big compiles? Because sometimes I compile OpenWRT, which basically compiles the world. Right?
Yeah, I've never seen it being slow or anything.
I mean, you know, if it's regex parsing multiple regex against several gigs of output, I can imagine it would slow down a bit.
Yeah, I've never noticed it getting any slower than a shell buffer, so
right.
I would think it's about the same. But I don't really know. I've definitely had, well, I mean, the other day I had a shell buffer that got really slow. But I don't think, I mean, I just think it was a lot of output. There's not much I could really do with it. So.
Did you use org mode for the presentation?
Yeah, I used org present. I had never used that before, so it was pretty easy. There's also like some org pressy thing that does. And
that puts to the reveal.js?
Well,
no, there's yeah.
The org pressy is similar to org present. It just supposedly doesn't have as many features. And there was also some like buff show or something like that you can use where it'll like give you key bindings to just go through different buffers. But this seemed easy.
So I was making a list of things that were mentioned that we might want to talk about at a later date, and that was one of them. And I'm volunteering you to at least show us what you.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I put together. I've actually for the first time been playing with org mode, and I just put together some a few notes in case I needed to fall back and remember things. And I'm like, wait. What he did.
It was really easy.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm so new to it, so. At least to see how you organize it to jump between sections and things. Yeah.
I think org mode is one of the sort of best kept secrets of Emacs. A lot of Emacs users don't use it, but once you discover it, they're like, "There's this bean
Yeah, I only know how to make outline. I only know how to basically expand things. And, that's pretty much all I know how to do right now. So. Although we did teach a Clojure class a couple of weeks ago, and we were using it for the notes, and I discovered you could have source blocks, and I could actually have my source block with code, and I could evaluate my Clojure code because this was a Clojure class in a live Clojure REPL inside of it, so I could put my examples there, and it would show the output below, and so I felt I was exceeding my my abilities greatly to make that work, but it was kind of fun.
If you do any math and you like that, then TechMax, the WYSIWYG math editor based on an Emacs style paradigm, that can do that with the Maxima tool and a bunch of other algebraic manipulation tools. So you can just go in there and you can literally type out a maths expression and have it evaluated for you, and then it'll format all the results in tech style, beautiful math.
That's if like I used to use it for my .emacs file, where it would load up a big work file, and what was nice is when you're in it, you can hit like this Control-C period or Control-C comma or whatever it is, and it'll pop out to like a buffer with just that syntax highlighted, whatever like the normal mode is. So if it's Python, you can have the whole Python mode, and it's like really nice. So it's pretty sweet.
Cool. Right. So our next presentation is going to be from Norm Richards, and he's going to be talking about doing Clojure development on Emacs with CIDER. Right. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. So this was Eric's suggestion here, and so John does some quite a bit of Clojure. I do Clojure. Sounds like you've played with it just a little bit, but for those of you who aren't, it's not. I'm going to try to keep this to be sort of what's interesting about this.
Can you share your screen too?
It should be shared. Did it
become
unshared?
Nope, now you're sharing. For some reason it's not coming through.
Oh, maybe it's the multiple display thing. I mean the screen switching thing. I'm in full screen mode. Well, let's see.
So if you just go
I can put this over here, but that's going to be kind of uglier, but I guess that will still work. Because I'll be jumping between windows, so if I can get this.
Is anyone else? Okay, there now I'm seeing.
Yeah, it just has to be all on the screen. There you go. Yeah. So I'm not. So this looks. This is a little distracting to me because I'm used to I'm used to running this in full screen mode so which gets rid of all the Chrome. So this is actually a difference. I found this is one thing that I do differently from it seems like most modern Emacs people is I've not learned to leave the terminal mode. So I do all of my Emacs in terminal mode here, and I will split up.
It's okay, I don't do that either.
I'll split up. I'll use iTerm to create multiple multiple windows, and so my typical dev environment, and I've increased the font here just so we can see it, is to have like an editor and maybe a couple side things. So I actually don't do a lot of my shell stuff in Emacs. I'll tend to have a couple like a git and other things outside, which I have not yet learned how to do effectively inside of Emacs.
Maggot, man. Oh my God, Maggot.
I've used it. Yeah, let me add this to our list here.
I'll volunteer for that one because that stuff changed my life.
It
really changed my life.
Now my screen's so low I can't pull up my little notes on the top, but I'll add that to the things. Yeah, because I figured I'd post a list of everything we talk about that I figured at least one person in addition to me would would not know, and then get people to volunteer. Because I think like this stuff, there's a lot of stuff that we all have some level of knowledge of something that exceeds other people in here, and I'm not an expert on a lot of this stuff, but I'm willing to talk about anything I happen to know here. All right, so CIDER is a mode for developing Clojure and Emacs, and I think it's interesting enough to talk about because we have with CIDER we have a very, very different model of development than you have for most things. So when you're doing Python or Ruby or something like that, most likely if you're connecting to something, you're doing it using an inferior process, right? So an inferior process is where Emacs will start up a process like a Ruby process or a Python or something, and it will communicate it to it by just sending it, basically stuff on the just standard in, right? And the only processing is equivalent to what compilation mode gives you, which is some processing of the output, right? And CIDER mode is very different. CIDER is not an inferior process. It has it actually connects to it can start up a process for you if you want it to, but it connects to it over a socket. Right, so it's got its own network protocol, and that enables some very sophisticated interactions with it that exceed what I think other modes give you. In particular, it gives you one of my favorite things, which is my ability to go into my live running production staging, or a coworker's process. I can actually connect my Emacs to their running process, and we can code something or debug something. And I'll actually demo that in a minute. So, so if you want to install CIDER, you get CIDER. You have to get it from Milpa. I'll put. Actually, let me. This is going to be very painful to try to work like this. But I'll do my best. So you do have to do Milpa. So by the way, somebody who is really familiar with packages, again. Emacs packaging. When I got back into Clojure, got back into Emacs a couple years ago. Packaging was all completely new. I don't know how many of you guys started before packaging was around or not. And I strongly. One of the reasons that I found Emacs to get painful to me is managing all of those, all of your .emacsd and pulling in all this stuff, and eventually it just crumbles under its own weight, right? Yeah. So I'll put that out as a request too. So, anyways, but you have to get it from Milpa. It's not normally available. Without jumping through some hoops. It's not when you listen if you don't have Milpa, you're not going to see it in your package list. Is what I'm saying. So here's what I'm using here. The main things I'll show today are CIDER and paredit. paredit I would like to do a talk on at some point, because paredit I consider to be the greatest thing in the universe.
It's true.
Before I get into there, for those of you, and paredit is something that even if you're doing, let me make sure I have paredit mode on this buffer here. There we go. Even if you're doing regular Emacs list stuff, you'll want to use paredit. So if one of the things that may turn you off to Emacs list, I think, is the fact that it's really that managing all these parentheses can be a bit of a pain. So paredit is a mode, just high-level overview, is a mode that will never let you have unbalanced expressions. So but it's more than just inserting parentheses. It gives you the ability to so I'm working here, and let's say I want to come in here and I want to move my parentheses over, right? Or I can go the other way, right? If I want to split an expression, right? Or I want to now I want to pull that in, and I'll pull that whole thing in, right? And I want to just delete that whole expression, right? Or I want to do something like, let's just change I guess normal Emacs, but this will work for full expression. So I move and it's all expression aware. So that's all I'm going to go into about paredit, just to say check it out, and at some point in the future when there's interest, I'll show it, because I think paredit is of interest if you're doing Emacs list as well. But it's the one thing. I mean, it's the one thing that really I think keeps you sane, because it actually turns. I think it turns S expressions from being a sort of a language liability from a developer perspective to being like the greatest way to code ever. With paredit, it really is. It's amazing. I mean, if there were a church for paredit, I would attend every week.
YAML would be its.
I despise YAML with a passion. Yes. All right, so a couple other things I have on here are autocomplete mode, rainbow delimiters, and a couple other things that you'll see when you get into the Clojure. Just sort of to let you know what you're seeing. I've turned off a few things that I think might be distracting, but I will leave autocomplete and rainbow delimiters on. Eric mentioned projectile and a smart mode line, if you're wondering why this looks like this down in when I'm still in terminal mode. So that's just sort of an overview of what you're seeing in my environment. So. Because I find it disorienting sometimes to look at other people's Emacs environments, and not disorienting, but confusing, because I'm like, how in the world is your Emacs doing that? I totally believe it's incredibly powerful, but I would like to know what at least the name of the magic you are invoking. Right? Okay, so let's get started here. I'm going to create a new project, line, some project. Line is the Clojure dev tool. So this is just going to put me in an empty project, just temporarily. I'm going to jump in. All right. So now that I'm in here, of course, you notice syntax as you before. I'm going to open up the generated file here, and we'll take a look at some of the things we can do with it. The most interesting thing I want to show you is I want to actually run some code. So we'll start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a Clojure process. This is it's going to be a meta X CIDER jack in, or Control C meta J. And what this is doing is it's starting. You see it starting in REPL server. So this is going to look a lot like an inferior mode. So first you're going to look at this and hey, I can. This looks like everything else, right? What's interesting here is now that I'm doing that, and I can do all the things I would normally do. You might normally do. For instance, I might want to load this particular namespace in. This is a running process, but there's nothing in it. So I can load a namespace. Save it, yes. Control C, Control K, load the namespace in. I can actually change Control C meta N. I can change to the project. So I'm actually in this namespace with this loaded. So I can actually call foo, and execute the code. So what's interesting here now? The mode here gives you. I'm going to delete the comment here. The thing. And I'm going to say, okay, now I've got some code, I've made some changes, and this works a lot like Emacs list development. I just do Control X, Control E, and it evaluates that code in my connected process. So if I come down here again and run through, we've got it, right? I've got completion here, of course, with anything. So if I Control X, evaluate those things. And then it's all in here. I guess I should use something. So all your typical completions. So it's a pretty interesting mode. I won't go into much about Clojure, but I will show you a few things that are interesting. For instance, one thing about all this is you have is a macro system, right? So I can actually, if I were to say def macro, I got to think of something. Pick one. So let's write something real quick. So I'll. So this is a macro. So let's say we want to do something. Pick one. So the reason we have a macro is that let's say we wanted to write. We'd like to say something like pick one between either print lining. Right. So we'd like to do that and have something like that. So let's actually see if this works. I'm going to evaluate this down here. Hello, hello, hello. World, world, hello, hello. Okay, so it's working, right? So now of course, this may not seem very impressive, or you might not even see why we need a macro. But what it's doing is it's doing a code rewriting, right? And so you can imagine that this. So what's actually happening is this function actually essentially gets the code passed in, and it rewrites the code. And Emacs has macros, right? Emacs list. Okay, so it probably works quite similarly.
So this is a compile time.
Yeah, exactly.
Evaluation of the random number to switch the code branch.
So this is actually let's see what it's doing. So if I
hold on, the whole thing is quoted, isn't it? So
So pick one, compile. So in this case, we could just do. So let's compare these two. That's actually really interesting. So
and this was a little rusty, which is why I didn't spot the quote in the first place.
And add Clojure macro. So let's compare these. So one of these. All right. So evaluate that. Make sure that's still working. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. So for instance, here I can actually do Control-C, Option M, and I can it will actually expand the macro for me all the way and show me what's going on here. So I can see that this code here, pick one, is getting syntactically transformed, and what actually gets compiled is a runtime is a compiled expression that says if random number print line hello. It's otherwise print line nil, right? So this print line compile over here, though, is doing something different. If I macro expand that, Control-C, meta M, you see it's actually choosing one at compile time, and it will always be that expression, right? And using the macro expansion capability, I can actually come in there and see what it is. And so let me show you why this is a particularly useful thing in a language with macros here. So here is a project. So find, and so you'll see it in Clojure code, and I'm going to create. I'm going to start a process here. Now everything here in Clojure mode, to do anything useful, you need a running process because it's a very dynamic language, right? And so it needs a running process to be able to evaluate this stuff in and do all this smart navigation and things, right? So let me wait for it to get. So there we are. So let's say I look up here, and so anytime you see a def anything, you're pretty sure that's going to be a macro in any list. Going down to, so I can actually come here and Control-C, meta M, and it will expand it all the way. That might be a little bit too much, so I can actually use Control-C, Control-M, and it will just take it the first step of the thing. So I can see that the def template is just a syntactic transform that really says def landing page, and then HTML template, with the same things just transformed. And then there's more transformations. What this template actually is doing is it actually loads the file in at compile time and creates creates a function
that's going to have that at compile time and with the right places so that we can do the syntactic transforms. And it's not important what it's doing, but the point is that it's doing all of this stuff at compile time, and you can get sort of lost in this kind of stuff. And and CIDER mode makes it really easy to do this. I can also take a look at something like here. Here's my app routes. So routes, like a for web applications and slash, WebSocket chat, things like that. I can Control C, Meta M, and it will actually come down and show. Okay, these get things are actually expand down to more complex route, and it can figure out what's going on. So that's pretty cool.
That's nice because you could see right away like that the 405 defaults and like the different things that like it's making decisions for.
And let's say you want to see. And so what's nice about this is this is a running thing. So it's got all the live code. It knows exactly what all this stuff means, right? Which you normally don't have in a dynamic language when you're detached, when you're not attached to a process. So now I can actually come in here and I can ask questions about it. Like I can do. I changed both of them. I can do meta dot, which will actually take me into the source for a function, right? So I can actually say, what is resources? Well, resources was this. I saw this get before. What is get? And I can navigate around, and go through my code. And this is actually, I don't know if this may not mean much to you, but this is not my code. This is stuff off in a jar file that's in my Maven repository, right? And it's navigating into that and finding it for me, and of course I can pop back along that trail and get to where I am. I should have mentioned Clojure is a list that runs on the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine. So, which actually is kind of interesting because I can do things like.
I also saw that you had a land glyph substitution in there as well.
In my .emacs.
In the.
Oh yes, sure.
In that file you were just looking at.
I'll show you where that comes from.
That's something else I want to talk about.
Sure.
Splitting up the int.el and a .emacs file. What's the advantage of
using an init.el?
Yeah, and then breaking everything up, and how people break up their things, because my .emacs is now 400 lines long.
I like init.el because it's in your .emacs.d directory, so then that's my repository. So that's like the basic start of it for me. And then before I used to have like an org mode file which would include stuff, but now I just have other ELIS files. But that's a big one for me.
Well, I was going to ask for some advice, but I don't mean to hijack.
Oh no, and I will say I would defer to anybody else in the room. I just discovered this is where I can put my codes and it can work. And it worked. And I don't know what the other alternatives for this are, other than the fact that at some point I'm probably headed for pain because at some point I think I will have to throw away my init file and start over because I've already got some stuff in here as I was looking through here. Well, that's custom. Variables, so that's not important. But I've got some stuff in here, and I was looking through, and I commented on a few things for today. But I looked through here, and I was like, wait, okay, am I actually using every piece of this? I believe so. Here's some of the org mode stuff, and org Clojure that I did. Okay, got that. So today I remember all this stuff. Or I got this prologue stuff. I haven't done prologue for half a year now, and it's just sitting in there. And at some point, I'm gonna that's gonna.
I've seen a good scheme that I've seen is people they use init.el and they just require a bunch of files per mode. So they'll have their JavaScript. Yeah. All their customizations related to JavaScript will be in one file and Python, whatever you've got.
Okay. I've heard something else I'm trying to do personally, with it back to the init.el, is that I'm actually creating a symlink of my for every home directory on all the different machines, like my home machine, my work laptop and all, to my Dropbox account with configs with a Emacs.d directory in there. So then I just symlink that every time because I have Dropbox on every single machine. So then it travels with me, which seems kind of not Emacs-y. Like I should be putting it up on GitHub or something like that.
Came up.
Yeah, I looked into that. BCSH was the thing, and then my repos or something.
Yeah, there's a really cool hack, to do that.
I didn't have enough customization stuff. Because they kind of the example they show, they had 5 or 6 different sort of apps that they kind of kept customized, and so you would go and just update them all and do things. But it was
was one command. And,
Yeah, it was
and all of
pretty
this stuff was in Git repos.
Yeah.
I just like the idea of it being able to travel with me.
Yeah.
Because deep down inside, I spend. Sorry, I don't mean to.
Oh no, this is the whole point. Is to use this as a launching point for discussion. So please, derail as much as you want.
I spend all this time customizing my workflow and all that stuff, and then I'm an infrastructure guy deep down inside. I know machines decide to take shits on themselves pretty early on, right? So I don't want to lose all that work. So I want to have my .emacs.d directory and all my customizations travel with me, and it seems like the Dropbox is the best option for me personally.
Yeah, I keep it all. Currently, I keep my .emacs.d in a Git repo.
Okay.
It does. I do lose all the packages that I've accumulated.
But if you run with the .emacs.d, because it puts in Melba, or at least for Melba, right, and then you have it in your
Right.
Dropbox, it'll travel with you.
Yeah, but I still have to install all the packages.
I can show you what I can show you what I use.
I thought it was all compiled code in there, and it's fine.
You can't. I use something else. I use something called use package.
Okay.
And so that will dynamically load it as you need it, and it's a lot
Oh
easier.
Yeah. The problem with if you are moving around the compiled code is that if one of your machines upgrades to a new version of Emacs, then it's going to recompile everything, and all of your other machines are going to break.
Oh, that's true. And that's also another conversation. I see that you're using 24 here. I'm still on 23. Is that
Get with the times, man.
The packaging stuff alone makes 24 worth it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started before I had Emacs 24, and then that's why I have this one. But I don't actually need any of this stuff anymore.
That's the primary reason I upgraded to Ubuntu 14.04 as soon as I did. It's because it came with Emacs 24.
Really? Okay, because I use Emacs built for OS X, or that binary that comes down.
Emacs for OS X?
There, thank you. Yes. And
That's 24.
That's 24.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Hold on a second.
Must verify. It's like I've been given a new life.
Yeah, right.
24.3 is what I have.
For some reason, I don't have it in my phone anymore. There's an Android port now.
Oh, is that
Oh my, you're right. It is 24.
Excellent.
Problem solved. Yes.
So anyways, this was the Lambda substitution that you were saying here. I copied this basically off of the net. There was somebody doing a different substitution to substitute the F symbol for a function, but I prefer to see a lambda. So so whenever you see a lambda, that's really just Fn for right. So that's my way to leave a mark. Although it does
Is that a Clojure feature that if it sees?
No, that's this right here.
Well, I know that
just
you're
Emacs.
doing
You're
the substitution, but when the reader actually sees that,
No,
you
it's
see a
only
big
for
symbol.
it's only
Oh, it's only
display.
okay.
Yeah.
There's like some
Okay.
symbols. What is it? Special symbols mode or something like that. It's going to be in the next version of Emacs that I'll like. Pretty
So I
simple.
use Pretty Symbol. I've played with this. You can see I was doing
I
this back
see.
in the Python
Yeah.
time, just for kicks,
So
trying
it's
to.
purely display.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, but it does cause me problems because all the time. So I'll be writing something, and I'll just and I'll copy this out and I'll copy it, and I'll like put it in a gist, and then I have to go and edit the gist and change all the lambdas to FN. Like
Because it doesn't know.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't know that you're copying. There may be something like if
Right.
That might actually.
I do PB copy. No, that's still pasteboard, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's
they're-
one of those things that if you actually use the graphical Emacs, that might come through correctly.
Yes.
Okay, that's something to test.
Because the graphical Emacs understands the. But I'm with you. I do most of my Emacs in shells because the thing that I hate is when I SSH into a machine and type in Emacs and it's like, but there's no X here. And I'm like, damn it.
It's also slow when you do it.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, and the other reason, the main reason I do it is because I really like iTerm, and the iTerm split screen stuff. I think it's just better than the Emacs ability to do that. This may be because I'm not entirely comfortable, like in my personal process, to start Emacs shell or something like that for all of my things. If I were, I might find the Emacs stuff. But the ability, my ability to get in here and move these things around and
For me,
and again with the GUI environment, this may have already been solved, and I just haven't given it time.
For me, what got me into MetaX Shell was the ability to yank and cut from the buffer and then throw it somewhere else. Like that alone was just like, as soon as I realized I could do that, I'm like, why have I never done
Yeah,
this?
because
before?
I used to like always work on a VM, and I had to SSH in, and I would just be doing stuff in Emacs. But then I was like, this is ridiculous, because if I wanted to copy and paste something that output in my shell or whatever, I was like, okay, well, this sucks. I got to, so I would just copy it and had a little function that post to our like internal paste bin, and it was really, really easy and nice.
What I killed for there was ace jump mode inside of Medax shell. I haven't been able to figure that out for the life of me. Because then when I have this massive stack trace, I'm like, oh, I want to go to the top, and not all the way to the top.
Compilation minor. The answer is sitting right there.
So I use Emacs with Awesome, which is a tiling window manager, and that's one of the reasons why I use a similar paradigm to you, because it means I can have one Emacs process running on one of the work panes and pull up a letter shells very quickly, and then Awesome has this incredible thing where you can just cycle through different layouts where it'll bring one master window, turn them up to like half the screen, and stack all the other ones neatly down the side for you. And things like that.
Yeah, I use Stump Window Manager, which is kind of like rat poison, but it's like more like
yeah, it's kind of like rat poison.
And there's another one that I saw recently called DOWM or something like that.
Yeah.
That also is similar to that.
IW3. No, I3.
I3.
That one's supposed to be amazing, but yeah, obviously I'm using a Mac.
The best thing about Awesome is it's scriptable in Lua, so you can just extend it like that.
See, in Stump, it's scriptable in Lisp. You can connect to it and do this sort of stuff with it.
So to the conversation about using terminal mode versus graphical mode, I am told, and I have not been able to figure out how this works yet, that in Emacs 24 there is a way where you can launch a local graphical mode and connect to terminal-based Emacs on other machines through SSH and pull up their buffers.
Really?
Emacs
server. Yeah, Emacs clients and Emacs server.
Like I said, I haven't been able to figure out how to make it work yet, but I'm told it is a thing.
I'll add that to our list. I'll put that on the wish list. Unfortunately, my screen resolution came down, so my little Evernote thing up top, I can't get into it right now. So that's okay. Okay, a few more things. I'll speed this up because the thing I really want to show you is the network REPL stuff, which is really why this is worth spending some time on. I will point out just a couple things. Things like the ability to get documentation on a function. It's, like this is a function just in a library. It's all got built-in docs. So basically, all that nice stuff you get developing Emacs Lisp, like the ability to look up definitions for functions, and you get that because you're in the Emacs process. With Clojure mode, you get 99% of the same benefits because you're connected to a live process and your tools know how to do all this stuff. So you get all the benefit of having that you would have of having the best Emacs Lisp IDE for something that's not Emacs Lisp, right? So let me jump ahead to the exciting part of here. So here I've SSH'd into so I've got my VPN up. I've SSH'd into our staging machine, and I've proxied the NREPL port locally. So here's a code base. I'm going to connect to it. Oh, no, so CIDER quit. So I'm going to port 555. So as of this point, I'm actually connected to my staging machine, and that is this thing right here, right? So this is work. This is live behind a VPN. I mean, the web is obviously exposed, but the NREPL and stuff is all behind a VPN. Mm-hmm. So I can actually come in here and. So here's the actual code. You see, welcome, please sign in. So if I come here and just change that, right? Control C, Control F to evaluate the top level form in the thing. If I come back here and reload the page, it's you see the change. So this is really amazing. I mean, this is really nice because this is a remote server, right? This is another machine behind a VPN, and I'm able to develop. I could actually come in here. And so if I go into, well, I'm afraid because we're broadcasting, I don't want to jump into something that might show some configuration or something like that. It's just a staging machine, but I do want to be a little bit extra careful because of the web recording. But I could actually come in trying to think if there's something
So
that I
you have
know.
the whole machine on VPN here, or is this just an SSL VPN through?
So this is I've got a full VPN, but I'm just doing port forwarding through SSH.
Right.
So,
right. Okay. So it's just an SSL.
Yeah. So the REPL, I mean, I guess this is one secret leaking here, is that we run it on port 4242, the NREPL, the NREPL port. So I proxy that to 5555 on my local machine, so I know, because that way I can remember when I see 5555, when I see something else, I'll know that that I'm talking to that. And I can change. Let me change this back real quick, and go back into our process and. Whoop. Hold up. There we go. That should reset it then.
You like to flush the cache.
Interesting. That's interesting. I am actually not sure.
Do you have multiple REPL connections? Right
Yeah.
now?
Did I accidentally start one up there?
I think so.
Oh yeah,
This
this
is
is
a different version of.
yeah. And I am not on the right port. So let's. I may have actually accidentally done that. Let's see, host port 5555. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I must have, when I was switching contexts, I must have started a second REPL there and didn't remember just out of muscle memory there. So that's really cool. What's particularly cool about this is then, let's say we're having a problem. We do a lot of API stuff, right? So I can actually go in, if somebody's reporting a problem live, I can actually connect into the server. I can put some debug statements that says, if you see this header, dump some log stuff out, and then I just push that into the server, and then suddenly these, the person who's doing the testing can add this header in, and then we'll start doing that, and we can actually live debug in the staging environment. I can actually do this in production too, although obviously we tend to prefer to not do that. But if I have a problem, and there's a customer having a problem right this very second, I can actually connect into the production, and get in there. I can check the state of things. I can patch a function, change something, and oftentimes I can have a problem diagnosed and fixed in 5 minutes, right? Because I can do that. Now we prefer not to do that. We would prefer to catch it in staging or in dev. But when we need to do that, because of this capability, I can get in there and I can very replace a specific function. You just be careful about what you're doing, right?
Is there a way to, like, if you do screw something up epically, is there a way to, like, just be like,
well, you would
unload all the code and put back the way it was?
Well, of course you could stop and start the process, right? Because it's all in memory. Or if you know what buffers you edited, you can reload those exact things to their source. There's nothing in there. Although that would be interesting to try to have to see. I guess it's probably not possible, because when you overwrite something, you lose the original state. So there's probably but there's probably ways you could approach that, right? So
Git, of course.
Yeah.
Git is your friend.
Well, yeah. So this is in memory. So there's no files being changed. There's no anything there. It's all completely live. And that's
truly doing it live.
Yes. So I mean, and this is, but let's say I'm developing with somebody, and we're a completely remote team. I can add, if somebody's having a problem. Of course, we can Tmux or something, right? But we can both go to the VPN and proxy ports, and I can actually connect to his server, and we can actually interact with this same code at the same time if we want to, right? And that's one of the really, really powerful things about CIDER for Emacs, that it just puts it, I think, head and shoulders above an inferior mode or something like that, is the ability to have this networked connection to it.
So are there other languages that are supported besides Clojure?
No. Now with the NREPL stuff, it is Java, so I could actually load in new Java classes, and in theory, since Scala is Java, it could do that. I've never, I don't know if there's issues. I mean, many of those other, now because Clojure is a very dynamic language, it can support this sort of dynamic interaction. I don't, there's certain limitations that you would have, like from Java and other things, that would make that, maybe not very fun. Perhaps not even feasible. Like like normally you don't have the ability to load a new make a change to a class file, and change the same objects in memory. You could tell Java to create a new class loader and load a new version of a class into that. Well, if you can actually do direct code patches in the debugger. Yeah, if you start it up with that mode, right? Like if you start it up and tell it. You have to enable that mode on startup for security reasons. But once you've got that enabled, you can go in. Yeah. You can actually tell the debugger, which is probably what this is doing behind the scenes. No, actually it's using because Clojure, when it creates a new thing, the Java class names are not important, so it can just create new Java classes. Right. And the Clojure namespaces are what's modified. Right. So it keeps just like Clojure is completely immutable. All these functions, we're never actually replacing a function. We're just changing what that name means in a particular namespace and loading in a new version of the function. Yeah.
Have you ever had so say you did connect to some running process? Mm-hmm. Has there been like a loop and you switched out the mapping function? In place, has something like that ever happened? I was curious about that. Or would it complete that?
No, well, it would depend. Like if it's already looked up the var and resolved that to a value, that's not going to change. But if the code were to look up the var again, if it were referenced, then of course that would take effect immediately. Yeah. Right. So there's a little bit of knowing in Clojure. It's the same thing if. I don't know if you've ever done this, in Java, like in JavaScript, right? When you have a callback and you pass it in a function.
Oh right, yeah. You have the reference that function, so you're not.
You've already got that function. You're not passing in a name, so if you change what that thing means.
Yeah, that's what I would think. If you did a map call or something.
So in Clojure has different rules about what how that stuff works than JavaScript, but it's sort of the same idea. The other thing, which I don't have time to show you, is since we're talking about JavaScript, is Clojure compiles to Java. It also compiles to JavaScript, and I can do the same stuff. I can actually REPL into a web browser, right? And maybe I think we're running low on time, so I could put something together to show that off at another time. But it is very cool to actually have your web browser I can actually I would actually be able to say JS/alert hi, and it would actually in my web browser it would actually alert or something like that with the REPL, right? Which is pretty cool. But I'm just showing you. This is just the server mode, not the web mode. So Clojure script might.
I was going to ask, when you're developing, do you typically because in Python I'll run tests. Mm-hmm. So to run something, I'll run tests to do it. Do you do the same sort of thing with because I know there's a CIDER test or something.
Yeah. So I don't personally use that mode, so I can't demonstrate it. Our test stuff was written, started when the project started, and it's our test infrastructure is pretty ancient, so it doesn't, it hasn't really gotten there. But yes, you have the same abilities to run tests, and then it'll show you which test failed. Basically.
Do you guys have a test suite that you're running when you are developing, or do you typically just update your REPL and then that works, and so now you.
Well, so I'll typically do that, but we do have a test suite, and we've got a if it comes up, we've got a Jenkins that runs our test suite, and I can run it locally too, right? Yeah. So we do that, but it's sort of the actual test script is really more of an integration style. So it's going to start processes,
that's what I was curious. Okay.
It's a very poorly constructed test suite overall. One of the things we'd like. The problem is it does the job, right? So any changes would be a pretty massive undertaking for something that works.
Yeah, I was just curious because I know Python devs and Ruby devs and stuff like that, typically TDD kind of workflows. This kind of I've tried to do this in Python, the same kind of REPL, and it just does not work because there's too much state everywhere that you can't make it happen. But it kind of makes TDD like it's like a better version of that in the sense of you're updating the code and see what happens.
This reminds me a lot of like small talk.
Yeah.
And TD like came out of that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive.
When I run my tests, so let me show you how I actually usually don't run the whole test suite until like the very end, or I just put the pull request, let Jenkins deal with it, and if it fails, then I come back and do some more. But so tests. So let's see.
Yeah, there's a long-running argument I had with one of the colleagues at Oracle about whether or not you should allow breakage on master. And my view was that, it's the production branches that you want to ensure are 100% stable, and you're always going to break stuff on master, so you might as well accept that and run with it and say, we're going to see stuff break on master, let's not cry about it, let's just go fix it. But he was like, master has to be golden 100% of the time. I was like, you're never going to achieve that, so...
Well, no, we use. I mean, no, I think you can, because like I'll pull a pull request, but we won't pull that to master until the test runs.
This was pre-Gits.
Yeah.
We were using ClearCase, which does it slightly different, but it doesn't crash.
Yeah. Well, so I was just going to say, I was forgetting my.
In fact, Oracle wrote their own clone of ClearCase in Perl and C and Java and Python because ClearCase wouldn't scale big enough for our repos. So they wrote their own clone of it.
What I do to do this is I will actually go to the REPL. Well, I've killed my remote session, but I'll actually just run the test home, or there's actually a way to run all the tests in the namespace, and I'll run the tests in my live process. But it's a little bit different from our actual test cases because our test cases are against a known set of data and pictures and services, and this is running against my dev environment. Yeah. But I will run a test like this, if I've changed, if I've changed something. So that's sort of the way that we do it. It's not the ideal way, but that's how I work. Because you are from there, so the point is I usually run my tests from the REPL. Right. I don't use this, but I mean it really does have a nice way of doing this. Yeah. Jumping to the test that failed and go back to your code and rerunning the failing test, and it's got that stuff in CIDER mode. I just, I'm not familiar with it.
Just to talk about your production and master thing.
Yeah.
This is usually the argument.
The Git flow.
Yeah, the Git flow where master is production. Yeah. And that's 9 out of 10 times the argument. It's the way you want to leverage Git to do the work for you.
Yeah. It's just we don't tend to use master for production.
Oh yeah, well it's how you set the rate up originally.
Yeah, we do it off one of the branches because master is where we do the work and we go out the other way. So
there was I came from a company that did the exact same way, and there was a literary branch called production, and that was our golden branch. And for me personally, as the quote unquote DevOps guy, that actually drove me crazy because on my Capistrano scripts I had to point to master. And I had to check against the SHA on that one instead of just going out to our private repo and make things happen.
We're using R10K with public environments, which is kind of similar because Chef's just too damn dangerous for us to give it to our operators. And that's the problem with it; it's just too powerful.
It's like Play-Doh, man. You can do whatever you want with it.
And that's really, really dangerous when you've got some of the operators that we work with.
Yeah, I respect that.
We use Puppet instead, where we have a little bit more pre-validation and sanity checking on it, It's still dangerous.
There's some great test suites for sure.
I don't want to break in too early, but we're coming. We have about 7 minutes left, and we need to make sure see if there's any more questions for Norman, and then kind of schedule what it is that we want to talk about for next month, so that those who are volunteered or who get volunteered against their will have ample time to prepare. So was there anything else that you wanted to show?
No, not particularly. I think the main thing was I thought the approach here to here. Let me see if I can do this real quick. JS/alert. Hi. There we go.
Nice.
So here, let me just put this home here. So console. Var hello equals world, and So I'm actually interacting with the JavaScript from Emacs. And so maybe this is worth a show at a later point. But I figured since I had a couple seconds, I could actually pull this up real quick.
Awesome. The other thing I noticed
Well,
is
thank you.
that in your actual Clojure code, you seem to be using some kind of neat library for rendering the HTML. Is that a library that's part of Clojure, or is it something that's
So in what you were seeing in the first one was something called Composure, which is allows you to do basically do your web structure as Clojure data structure.
Right.
So basically vectors and tags and build it up as data and then render it. And in this one, I don't know if I pulled up any of the code here, but it was using something called Ohm, which does the same thing but on the client side.
Right.
So,
Cool.
all right. So
That was great.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Ideas for next week? You were actually or next month. You took a bunch of notes.
Yeah, I did. Well, the two things I'm most curious about from today is, of course, I'd love to learn a little, to just see how you did the org presentation stuff, and the Git stuff. I've only played with it just a little bit, and I do like it because I can do I've stubbornly resisted in any sort of GUI form of Git because it gets I can't figure out what it's doing, but Maggie I could actually I was able to jump into it. I'm like, wait, I can pretty much do it seems to do. I just don't I don't have a very high level idea of how to use it, so I would love to see that.
Is it maggot or magic?
That's actually a debate. But unfortunately, I'm actually out of the country in October.
Okay.
So how about
I mean, it's too bad you're going to have to cancel your trip.
Yeah.